This story takes place 27 years after the First Corporate War. The Nest by Sean Carrière. Chapter 12. Inside the bank, the little silvery device slid across the marble floor before exploding in a blinding flash of white light and an eardrum piercing. Just outside, Kyle and Sam heard the explosion, and Sam rushed in first, leading with his automatic shotgun. Kyle was right behind Sam, holding his GAC submachine gun at the ready in case they came across anything rubber bullets couldn't handle. The bank was built early in the 20th century, and it retained a lot of its pre-Great Depression design with a high painted ceiling and a 12-meter-long cash counter opposite the lofty space from the twin oak doors. The top of the cash counter was beautiful hardwood and had to have been made in one piece from the trunk of a very old tree. There was little to no furniture in the open room, just a freestanding counter near the middle of the airy space littered with paper slips and writing pens on small chains. Along one sidewall were a few semi-comfortable looking wooden chairs, and along the opposite sidewall, near the long counter, was the emergency fire exit door leading out to the narrow parking lot. This door had obviously been put in decades after the bank was already built, as it looked too modern and out of place in comparison to the rest of the interior. At the front of the room, just off to the side of the twin oak doors, was the most visually stunning feature of the bank's interior. An old-timey cage elevator with a metal staircase wrapped around its sides and rear. With no time to admire the architecture, Kyle and Sam stood back to back as they moved carefully across the room toward the cash counter. Sam walked forward, pointing his automatic shotgun at the cash counter and hoping Danny Blue would stick his head up at one of the teller's windows. Foam rubber bullets were designed not to kill, but Sam figured it'd be funny to bust up the terrorist's pretty face. Kyle walked backwards behind Sam, aiming his GAC at the elevator and staircase. When the two men reached the long cash counter, they switched places. Sam turned around and pointed his shotgun back toward the elevator and staircase as Kyle hopped over the counter. Behind the teller stations, there was about 1.5 meters of open walking space before a series of waist-high lockable metal filing cabinets. The back wall behind the filing cabinets was really a series of 3 modest glassed-in offices with the main vault at the far end from the fire escape door. Kyle spotted 2 backpacks and a duffel bag tucked behind the cash counter. These had to belong to Danny Blue and his accomplices, as they looked too new and too clean to have been there since the Corporate War. Kyle hopped back over the counter, and both he and Sam rushed back across the room. This time, toward the elevator and staircase. Both men led with their weapons. As they got close to the staircase and elevator, Sam let his automatic shotgun dangle from its sling, freeing his hands to grab a flashbang, pull the pin and toss it down into the basement. After 1.5 seconds came the satisfying. Kyle began making his way down the stairs and activated the tactical flashlight on his submachine gun. Shining the beam down and noticing a blind corner at the foot of the metal stairwell, the young bounty hunter placed his forefinger on the trigger of his GAC.
To hell with trigger discipline,
Kyle thought to himself, reasoning anyone holed up in the basement would just be waiting to ambush him anyway. Sam remained on the main floor, aiming his shotgun up the metal staircase. This time, the breacher imagined shooting a foam rubber bullet into Danny Blue's nutsack should the terrorist try coming down. Kyle reached the foot of the staircase and crouched near the blind corner. The trigger of the GAC was set at a mere 4 pounds of pressure to fire, and Kyle's forefinger was already applying 3.5 pounds. Kyle peeked around the corner and shined the beam of his tactical flashlight down a long, empty hallway. Along one side wall, about halfway down the hall, was an open doorway. At the very end of the hall was the closed door to the boiler room. Kyle got up, turned the corner and eased the pressure on the trigger of his submachine gun as he stepped past the elevator and walked toward the open door. Kyle crouched near the open doorway, took a deep breath and rested his finger back onto the trigger of his GAC. He shifted his weight into a squat and pivoted as he peeked around the corner. He shined the tactical flashlight around the room in quick, wide arcs. After checking all four corners, Kyle saw the room was empty. He then shined the light around more slowly. That's when he noticed the walls all had numbered metal drawers and cabinets in them, safety deposit boxes. Kyle exited the safety deposit box room and walked to the end of the hall, careful to keep his GAC pointed at the closed door to the boiler room. This was the best spot for an ambush, and the young bounty hunter knew it. Kyle reached the door, tried it, and found it was locked. He took a step back as he let his submachine gun dangle on its sling. Kyle then plucked a flashbang from his webbing and pulled the pin. The young bounty hunter kicked the door open and threw the flashbang into the boiler room. Before the flashbang could go off, he cradled his GAC. For a split second, the hallway was lit up bright as day. This explosion was even louder than the others as it echoed through the dungeon-like basement. Luckily, the helmet of Kyle's radiation suit muffled the sound. The young bounty hunter waited half a second and rushed into the room. As usual, Kyle led with his GAC and shined the tactical flashlight around in quick, wide arcs. Other than a furnace unit, a fuse box and a janitor's station, the room was empty. Kyle had been so tense, he'd forgotten to breathe. He eased up and finally allowed himself to take a deep breath. The young bounty hunter mentally prepared himself to get back upstairs so he and Sam could finish clearing the rest of the building. That's when he saw movement out the corner of his eye, near the kicked open doorway. Something, or the shadow of something, had just moved along the floor.
What the?
Kyle spun on his heel, turned his whole body around and shined the flashlight where he thought he saw it. But nothing was there. The young bounty hunter rushed out of the boiler room and shined his tactical flashlight down the long hallway. Like before, the hallway was empty. Even at the far end of the hall, back near the elevator, there was nothing. Kyle's finger stayed on the trigger of his submachine gun as he was certain he'd just seen something. The thought nagged at him torturously. Just what did he see out the corner of his eye? Did he even see anything at all? After a few more seconds, Kyle released the trigger of his weapon and took another deep breath. He chalked it all up to stress and a lack of sleep as he began walking back toward the stairs. The young bounty hunter was satisfied the basement was clear, and there was plenty more building to go through. As Kyle climbed the stairs, he was happy to leave the dark basement behind him. Unknown to the young bounty hunter, had he activated the exterior microphones of his suit's helmet, he would have heard something. He would have heard scratching, clicking, and scurrying.